One-way ticket. Children do not listen to what you say. They mimic what they see. I did not have to be out in the streets to experience sex, crime, lies, abuse, deception, or abandonment. It was all in my sanctified house. I continued to collect boyfriends like I was playing ball and jacks. Although all of them did not make it home to meet my father, I was still unconsciously looking for that relationship that I just could not get. I was on my grind something serious because it was my senior year and I was so excited. I was now in the thick of my goal. I would leave and finally get to be with my mother. It meant more to me than prom or senior class day, more soothing than the pain I had endured, and more fulfilling to my soul than the makeshift relationships that I had created. So many years had passed. I had lots of questions and so much to catch up on. I missed her so much. I wanted to be with the woman who birthed me. I wrote a lot in my journal as if I was sitting in front of her. I would show her all the books I had filled up. I would also tell her about the hell I was going through. I was leaving and not looking back. With this entire marvel, I was starting to have questions about my mother again. Why could I not see her? What was the big problem? We went everywhere else supporting my father's wife and her children. What was the big taboo concerning my mother? She was only a 30-minute car ride away. I asked my father about it, and he told me that the court said if he was caught in Philadelphia, he would get arrested. For what? I did not understand what they had to do with my mother, but I knew it was a lie, and it was soon confirmed. At some point, I got into so much trouble with boys that he took me to see her. Perhaps she could talk some sense into me. It would be the last time I would visit with her. I remember sitting across from her, awkward, unable to contain my composure because I was so filled with emotions that I could not even talk. I do not know what my father told her, but she was so calm and understanding. She told me that I did not have to put myself out there, that if I wanted attention, the best antidote was to stay to myself. It would make the boys curious, and they would come to me. But I was never to just give away my value. It was a little too late for that, but I received everything she said. We did not get to discuss much because my father came to pick me up within a few hours. I do not know why I could not stay. I did not want to leave. I needed this time with my mother. He was hiding something and was afraid that she was going to tell me the truth. It all went too fast, but I was not worried because I was going to be living with her soon. We had all the time in the world to catch up. During my car ride home, I confronted my father on some things and he denied it all. He made sure that I never saw her for the rest of that year. What I did not know was it would be the only and last conversation I would have with her. It was the weekend, and I was being the usual maid of the house. I was putting up clothes in their bedroom. My father came upstairs and told me that my mother died. I completely lost it. "You did not let me see her," I screamed over and over again. He tried to hold me still. I was filled with so much anguish. She was taken from me again, and this time, forever. What was I going to do now? My dreams were crushed. My heart was completely broken. How selfish could my father have been? He never spoke of her, never allowed me to talk or visit her. All I could feel was emptiness. In the days leading up to her funeral, I was wondering where my life was going. I had graduation soon, and now I am dealing with my mother's death. My father never came to sit and talk with me, nor console me. His wife left me alone for once. Lord knows what I would have done if she had came at me. At the funeral, I saw my blood brother and sister. It made me angry that my father kept me away from them too. I sat on the second row, staring at my mother in the casket. I still could not believe that my mother was gone. My father's wife had the nerve to show up and sit next to me trying to comfort me. I did not want her to touch me. She was a single woman, not other woman, as she so snidely told me when I confronted her. That's later in the book. She was the woman who my father ran around with, disrespected my mother and her children. She put her arm around me and it felt like lead on my shoulders. I shifted my body, gesturing her to get off me. In the midst of my mother's funeral, she mouthed to my father that I was acting up. My life had been abruptly changed, and she was whining because I did not want her to touch me? A full-blown, selfish bitch she was being. It was about my mother, not her. I wanted my brother to take me after the funeral, but he was too young to take on such a huge responsibility, in my mind. I did not want to go back home with either one of them. Following the days after, my mind was in a fog. All I could do was cry. There was still no comfort from my father. It was as if we just went to a random person's funeral. It was my mother, and I had every right to feel the way I did. I do not know if anyone in the church knew that my mother had died. But to my surprise, I received a visit from my friend, and it was a great comfort to know that someone cared, that someone knew that I had a mother that died. I do not remember any of my cousins, aunts, or uncles coming by to see about me. It was very weird, but then again, not unusual. We rarely had any visitors, and I did not have many friends as a result of it. I worked through my grief the best way I knew how. I cried, wrote in my journal, and pulled myself together for the sake of focusing on still leaving that house. I increased my momentum to look into colleges and obtain scholarships. I slowed down with the quest in finding a boyfriend and being sexually active. I gave it my all in making good decisions about my education. Because obtaining a college education was not talked about in the house, I had to depend on my sight. I observed what other classmates did. I was not the most sociable towards those who I watched. My friends were into everything other than going to college. I wanted more for myself and was desperate to make sure I used my charm and incisiveness to get where I needed to go. My good church friend always came through for me. She told me about one of her friend's father who sat on the board of the Westinghouse Corporation. They gave out scholarships to those transitioning into college. There was no question of whether I would apply. I did not know what I was doing, but I was going to learn quickly. I filled out the application and met the necessary requirements to have the board look at my glowing achievements in high school. I had won an Orator's Award that year, so I suppose I had some level of intelligence and debate skills to win them over. I received a $2,000 grant towards the college of my choice. Since I did not know anything about historically Black colleges and universities, and I did not have a deep thirst to attend a 4-year college, I chose a 2-year college to study paralegal studies. I would try the waters first before I made such a huge commitment. There was no extra money to take on this huge bill, and I certainly could not afford it with my income from the supermarket where I worked. I did not let it stop me, though. I asked around until someone explained to me how financial aid could help fund my education. As a result of my mother's death, I had a house to live in while I attended school. My brother was already living there, and I would be living with him. Although my mother was no longer living, I still could get to be in her presence. My plan was all set. I was on my way to freedom. Due to some conflict, I experienced a faint chance of finally having my father to myself. He and his wife had a brief separation where she left his house. Remember, he was in control of everything. I was beyond happy. Finally, we could have the relationship I always wanted. But I woke up to another woman in my space, impeding on my dream of having a healthy father-daughter relationship. This woman was familiar because she was the aunt of the boy I had almost pushed over the staircase in my early years in high school. I did not mind her being there because she would let me bring him into the house when my father was gone. Still prone to making bad choices when it came to boys, I did not know he was one of the biggest drug dealers in the neighborhood. And his aunt was one of his clients, and soon after, she introduced my father to her craving for cocaine. My father tried to hide it, but morning trips to the bathroom would reveal little baggies all over the floor. I could not believe what I had been dragged into. I escaped being abused by my father's wife to be pulled into even a bigger drama? Once again, he never looked out for his little girl. This woman became a fixture in the house, and I was not happy about it after a while. She was no longer cool with me when my father would let her wear my clothes out of my closet. I work hard for my things, and now he had his mistress wearing them? Talk about dismissive and rude. But what could I do? I was the child, and of course, I had to abide by his rules. I never once thought about his wife or her children, and soon, the woman that invaded my world disappeared. We were back to normal. It was my normal, and I was with my father again. Could this finally be happening? Perhaps with all the distractions gone, he could focus on what was really important. I was hoping that he would come to his senses for the sake of restoration. The atmosphere was peaceful, and nothing was stressful during this short-lived time in my life. It was Thanksgiving, and I spent all day preparing dinner with him. After hours of preparation, I went upstairs to get dressed. When I came downstairs, going over last-minute details, the doorbell rang. I was unaware of any visitors. It was his mistress and her family. What? Why did he invite them over? I kept my mouth closed and tried my best to be polite, but I was seething with anger. It was time to sit down to eat, and when I pulled out my chair, my father dismissed me into the kitchen to eat Thanksgiving dinner separate from everyone else. Over and over again, he showed me how important I was to him, and I kept trying to convince myself that what he allowed to happen to me was not real. This event was yet another reminder that his needs getting met were more important than me. He and his wife eventually worked out their issues, and she returned back to the house. I found myself back at square one, dealing with her abuse. Now a guarantee that my mother was not going to pop up one day, she was really comfortable in her behavior towards me. I was counting down the days to graduation. I had secured my spot at a 2-year college and had housing. I was ready to leave. Finding myself in her bad graces one day, she found one of my journals. She was catching up on what I had to say about her throughout the years. She called me into their bedroom. She sat on the bed with her legs sprawled out open like a whore ready to service her client. Holding my journal in her hand, she read my private thoughts out loud. I miss my mother so bad. I hate this monkey-looking bitch. As she read it, I was still trying to figure out how she was able to get the journal open. I kept the key on me at all times. This evil, crazy bitch took matches to the lock, burning it open. As she got up, she told me to get on my knees. I knew I was about to get a beating, but what I did not expect was her sitting on top of my head while she did it. I could not breathe or see where the belt was about to touch my flesh. She could have broken my neck, or even worse, suffocated me. Everything went blank afterwards. Her relentless attempts to break my spirit finally worked, even though I tried my best to prevent it from happening. After that experience that night, I stopped writing for years. The joy of writing left my body. I never told my father about the incident because he had already shown me his thoughts on who I was to him. Ignorance breeds dysfunction. It hides itself until the appropriate time to make its grand reveal, when you least expect it. It ushers itself in like a roaring lion. The aftermath of rejection securely tucked itself deep inside within me. I did not know what to call it, but I knew that my life was a lonely one. With sorrow in my heart, I still pressed forward to graduate. The smile on my face was conflicting. I had accomplished a milestone in my life, but was eager to step into a new chapter. I had experienced so much turmoil and was about to carry it into this new chapter of my life. The stench of my pain was creating a trail for potential vultures to come and feed off me. I packed my things to get ready for college. It was going to be a new atmosphere, miles away from what I knew. I was thrilled to be attending this new college, but sad that I could not walk into the house where my mother resided and see her there. I was going to make it work, but I needed guidance, and I just did not know where to start. Once again, I had to depend on my survival skills. My father and I pulled up to the house. I saw my brother and thought to myself, maybe he would be the father I never had. I walked into the house, not feeling a bit afraid about being on my own. Although my mother was not there, being in the midst where she was brought a comforting feeling. I got settled in my room and prepared for the upcoming days of becoming a college student. I would visit, but not my father, and definitely not his wife. I had some friends who I had considered important to me. For now, it was pure bliss. I was free. Because my brother had a girlfriend, I had some company, but I was very hesitant on getting close to her as a result of the women my father brought into my life. I did not trust them very easily. It took me a long time to warm up to her. I also had to get to know my brother, since my father did not include him in my life. It was all a huge adjustment. None of it mattered. I was away from the drama. College was great. I was able to attend with a familiar face. My good friend that attended high school with me got accepted too, and we hung out together when he was not chasing the new girls on campus. Everybody had someone except for me. Before I knew it, I found myself back on the hunt for a boyfriend. I did not have to do much. The pain stench was getting strong. Those who had no intentions of handling my broken heart with care tickled their dysfunctional senses. I was new to the area and being watched. I caught the attention of a boy who lived around the corner from me. He had beautiful hazel eyes and a nice smile. He never said anything for a long time, but I knew he was paying attention and somehow seemed to be in the same spot as me as I was on my way to class. I was not unfamiliar with hood boys. I dated a few. More importantly, I was not going to find myself in any relationship that looked like my father's. I was floating in my daydreams of finding a boy that respected me. That is what I told myself. However, the new wolf had plans for me. He was not watching me for nothing. Carefully mapping me out, he knew I had a different vibe, and he had to approach me in the right way. Yet, the end result would be the same. I took the bait and was smitten. He just wanted bragging rights that he got to sleep with the new girl in the neighborhood. That was all it was. It was this type of rhythm that would send invisible vibes to boys I had met throughout my college experience. It would leave me frustrated and angry because I could not understand why this kept happening to me. I was a good girl with a fragile heart. I just wanted to be loved. I met my best friend in college. She was absolutely beautiful, and to look at her by appearance, you would think she was one of those bougie girls. Although I was apprehensive about connecting with other girls and women, we clicked. I must admit, we had wrong misconceptions about one another at first, but what I appreciated was that our kindness overshadowed it all. She was, and still is, the nicest person I ever met. All the boys seemed to flock to her, running a marathon to get her attention. Even my friend who came to college with me harassed me to put in a good word for him. She was not having it. I was amazed at the power she had to hold true to her values. I'm sure she had her hiccups with the wrong boys, but there was a level of integrity that I admired about her. I watched because there was a lesson I could use. My mind went back to what my mother told me before she died. You want attention? Keep to yourself. It will make the boys curious and they will come for you, but never give away your value. I was watching her words come alive through my friend.